Toby here, back for another video. And as you can see, I've brought back the twice a week videos. I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a good crack. I don't care how busy I am, I'm going to find time to do these videos for you guys. But in today's video, I'm going to be going over something that I think will help a great number of you to improve your deadlift. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the deadlift into its component parts, teach you how to do the proper form, give some examples of bad form, and recommend you exercises depending on which part of the deadlift you fail. The deadlift could be considered one of the more technical lifts of strongman or lifting in general. The deadlift has so much technique to it that most people don't realize because they just see it as picking a bar off the floor and locking it out at the top. But there is so much different technique to take into consideration when doing the deadlift. When I first started deadlifting, I did one session on how to deadlift, and then I tried it on my own. And as you can see here, my form is pretty atrocious, and yeah, the deadlift just looks whack. And I had to spend a good amount of time trying to teach myself the proper form in order to get to a deadlift which looks a bit more like this. The form of the deadlift is one of the most key components in getting a big deadlift, because if you do not have the form correct, there will be some limiting factor that challenges you when you're trying to build those numbers up. Whether it be you're lifting it too far over your toes, so your lower back strength isn't quite good enough, you're not lifting your chest up at the start, so your back rounds, or whether you're not pushing off the floor quite as much and not incorporating enough leg drive, meaning you cannot get it off the floor at all. Whether it be any of these things, don't you guys worry, I'm going to go over everything I can possibly think of with what was wrong with my deadlift, what could be wrong with your deadlifts, and how I fixed them, and how you guys can fix them with examples of bad form and good form, and some exercises to help you fix your deadlift. So without further ado, let's jump into the tutorial. So, the deadlift is made of two component parts. These are two parts that I can break the lift down into to separate out different types of form. The first bit being the floor to the knees, being a more hamstring and glute dominant exercise using a lot of leg drive to get it from the floor to your knees. The second portion of the deadlift is from the knees to the lockout, which uses a lot more back strength and some glute strength to lock it out, and some consider to be the harder part of the deadlift. In order to get a good deadlift, you need to get those two component parts right, otherwise you will find yourself with a sticking point that you can't get past. Before we jump into why you might be failing your deadlift and in which portion of the lift you are failing the deadlift, let's get the form right, let's get the setup correct, and let's jump straight into how to do the correct form. So the very first thing you need to consider with deadlift form is your foot placement. Your foot placement may not seem that important, but it is the foundation of the entire lift. If your feet are not placed correctly, you can throw yourself off throughout the entire lift and cause yourself serious injury. You should be deadlifting in bare feet if your gym permits it, if not very, very flat shoes like Converse or something like that. I personally choose to do barefoot a lot of the time, but if I'm in the dirty floor or outside or my gym doesn't permit it, I wear a shoe a bit more like this, which as you can see has a perfectly flat sole. And that gives you a great basis for you to push off from and not tilt yourself forward or backwards, compromising the lift. Your feet should be very slightly wider than shoulder width apart and placed with the bar over the laces of your shoes or across your midfoot. So repeating that fact, the bar should be bisecting your foot directly in the middle, and to help with that placement, if you're wearing shoes, it is roughly where the laces begin on your shoes or where you tie the knot, which obviously is quite easy to find, but if you're not so sure, here is a quick little tutorial showing you where to place your feet. And as you can see, if your feet are too far back, then the bar will be over your toes and it will compromise the lift. More on that coming up. So your feet should be slightly more than shoulder width apart, so you have a nice strong position. If they are too narrow, you can find your knees buckling inwards like in this lift where I hadn't got it quite figured out quite yet, and that can cause serious injury and cause your knees to buckle and possibly even break. If your stance is too wide, you end up doing more of a snatch grip deadlift, which is harder on your back and more of a difficult exercise. You want your arms to be straight down and not compromising any sort of thing, with your levers being perfect if you can. So there's a perfect A to B straight line that you're not compromising by having your arms too wide. Now your feet are in place, the next thing is getting your back and chest lined up so you're not compromising yourself on the lift. If your feet are too far backwards, then your arms will tilt forwards and there will not be a straight line down. The bar should be traveling from A to B in a straight line, but if your arms, as you can see, are tilted too far forward, that is not a straight line, and when you come to do the lift, then the bar rocks backwards and it throws you off. The most efficient way to get the bar up is have it in a straight line, and a perfect deadlift will travel in a completely straight line from the floor to the lockout. The next most important thing is getting your back and chest lined up. You want to be lifting with a completely straight back so you're not putting a lot of tension on your lower back. You want to be driving through the legs as if you are in a leg press to get the bar off the floor into your knees, and then keeping your back straight, just lock it out. As you can see here, if your back is compromised and you're lifting with a rounded back, it can cause injury and really not be great. But if you're lifting with a straight back like a proper deadlift, you're using a lot more of your legs and your muscles that are supposed to be lifting heavy things to complete the lift. One of the most important things about the deadlift is your position of your chest and head. If these are out of position, it can cause your spine to curve and possibly put yourself in danger of injury. When you position your chest in the deadlift, you should be having a high and proud chest with your shoulders rolled slightly back, keeping your chest high, which keeps your hips low and keeps that back straight. If your chest is too rounded forward and your head is down, you will end up lifting with a curved back, which again puts you at risk of injury. If your chest is too high and you're looking at the ceiling and your head is back, it may look like your back is straight, but you're compromising your spine in the higher position with a proper risk of neck injury, which really isn't fun. And even to tell you the truth, when recording this clip of me putting myself in that position, I strained my neck very slightly, even with this light weight, just to show you how to do it. So that is a very important thing. A lot of people's coaches tell them to look up, look at them, don't look at yourself in the mirror. That's the thing. Do not look at yourself in the mirror whilst deadlifting. Keep your back and spine and chest neutral, so there is a completely straight line from the top of your head to the bottom of your back, and a completely straight spine, which will be its most powerful position. Now your chest and back are in position, let's think about the hips. The hips are probably one of the most important parts of the deadlift, which a lot of people neglect. A lot of people don't think that their hips and legs come into it too much, and it's a back lift, and hence they do it on back day, whereas the deadlift is more than 50% to do with the legs. Your knees should be just inside your elbows, not traveling past your arm and not behind your arm. If your knees are behind your arm and your hips are too high, then your arms are once again tilted forward and the bar swings out before coming up, causing a lot of issues. If your hips are too low and your knees travel in front of your elbows, then you compromise yourself, making it more of a squat than a deadlift, and it is harder to get out of that depth because the bar has to travel backwards before coming up because your arms are behind your center of mass. A perfect deadlift means that from the side you should not be able to see your knees because they are tucked inside your elbows directly in the center of mass. The bar will travel in a straight form from A to B without hinging forward or back. So there we have it. We have got a perfect deadlift constructed now. You know how to do the form. If you're still struggling, record yourself from the side doing your deadlift and see where your form changes from the perfect example I show in this video. Hopefully you guys find the timestamps useful, being able to navigate the tutorial to the different parts of the deadlift where you think you may be messing up. But from this point forward in the video, I'm going to be going over why you might be getting stuck in your deadlift and what exercises you can do to fix that. So as I said earlier in the video, the deadlift is broken down into two parts, the floor to the knees and the knees to the lockout. If you're struggling with getting the deadlift off the ground and you can barely break the floor and can't even get it to your knees, then that means your leg drive isn't as strong, or you might not even be incorporating it as much as you think you should be because you don't know how to set your position and envision yourself in the deadlift. So if you find yourself getting stuck at the bottom of the deadlift, this portion is for you. And I found myself getting stuck at the bottom of the deadlift more than I'm locking out. I've never failed locking out a deadlift. It's only from getting it off the floor, and that is my problem. So I've been incorporating a lot of exercises recently to try and build up my leg drive and try and set my position better. Hopefully, watching the form half of the video, you have taught yourself how to do the form better and envision yourself in a much better position from lifting from the floor. Because if your form is compromised, it is less likely that you're going to be able to get it off the floor, let alone lock it out. If your form is perfect and you're still struggling to get it off the floor, then this is where you need to incorporate some more exercises to strengthen your legs and strengthen your leg drive. The first half of the deadlift should be envisioned like a leg press. So completely leg-based, don't worry about your upper back and stuff. As long as it stays straight, you'll be all right. Imagine there's a big chair behind you like there is in a leg press and you're pushing against that, keeping yourself straight. And all of your force is going through, driving through your legs. And what you want to do is drive through your heels with a slight bit of pressure on the big toe, like you do in a leg press. And I'm sure most of you can leg press way more than you deadlift, so you know that you are more capable of lifting heavier weights. If you're struggling with leg drive, even after envisioning yourself in a leg press and putting all of your force through the floor, then you should try some of these exercises. One great exercise for improving your drive off the floor is the deficit deadlift. It is where you reduce the height at which you pull the bar closer and closer to the ground by standing either on plates or putting smaller plates on the bar to increase the range of motion and increase the amount of time that you spend getting it from the floor to your knees. This then incorporates more time under tension where you're trying to get the bar to your knees, therefore strengthening the leg muscles in proportion to your upper back, so you're doing way more with leg focus than you are upper back. Incorporating these once a week as a deadlift variation are really, really good at improving your leg drive. And you'll find, I reckon, that your leg press will go up and your squat might even go up from doing these deficit deadlifts. I recommend over the course of the weeks, reducing the deficit so it becomes more and more of a normal lift. And I'm sure you'll find that it's much easier then to get it off the floor because your body is so much used to pulling it so much further. Another good exercise for increasing your leg drive is the Romanian deadlift, which is just a deadlift where you do not put it down in between reps. You literally just lower it to the floor, don't touch and bring it back up. And that increases the time under tension for the entire deadlift and is a perfect exercise for both. If you're struggling with the lockout of the deadlift, you should start incorporating partial deadlifts where you pull from a higher position from just above the knees so you can only focus on the lockout portion of the deadlift. This is something I myself have been incorporating as part of a program, and I can find much benefit from it, and I've never locked out deadlifts more snappy than I have in this tutorial. Similarly with the deficit, you want to reduce the amount of partialness, I guess, you have on the deadlift by starting at a rack pull position, so you're only just barely moving the bar, and lowering the bar further and further each week until you become more accustomed to doing a full deadlift and the partialness is completely gone. If you do that, I'm sure your lockout will become a lot stronger because it puts a lot more focus in your upper back and your lower back, keeping it strong and pushing through with the glutes. If you want to strengthen your deadlift in general, I'd incorporate both of these exercises in some sort of program like I am right now, and I'm sure you will find some great progress. So there we have it. That is how I fixed my deadlift and how I think you guys can fix your deadlifts as well. If there's any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if you want me to specifically look at your deadlift form and use my eyes to tell you what I think you're doing wrong, then please don't hesitate to follow the link in the description to my Instagram or Twitter and shoot me a DM with a video of you deadlifting, and I'll tell you what I can see is wrong and what I would recommend you do. I'm no expert, I'm just a guy who's taught themselves how to deadlift a lot better through the use of YouTube videos, and I thought, why not just put a full YouTube video together of my experience and how I did it so you guys would know. So yeah, as I said, if you have any questions, leave them down below. If you want supplements or protein powder, anything like that, any straps, wraps, that sort of thing, go to the link to my band in the description. Use code TobyLifely1 for 10% off. I get a little kickback off of that and it really helps the channel out. If otherwise, if you want to do something for free, then of course, subscribe and like the video. It's completely free. Comment on it, share it about, get this channel growing, and I really hope that this tutorial can help you guys build a greater deadlift. If you have any other video ideas that you want me to do, leave them in the comments below and I'll get to them, add them to the list, you know the drill, and there we go. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys can beast your way to a good deadlift, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.